Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rise Beyond OCD Answers, Insight, and Inspiration to Move Forward. I'm Shannon Shy. We love doing this series. We have had incredible guests, and we will have an incredible guest today, a true superstar in the OCD recovery community. I'm glad everybody is watching this, whether you're living with OCD, supporting someone you love, or working in the mental health field. This is a caring space where we can learn, connect, and find hope together. And just a quick reminder, what we share today is meant for education and support. It is not a substitute for professional care. And if you ever find yourself in crisis, please reach out. You can call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or 911 if there is immediate danger. For international support, visit findahelpline.com. You are not alone. Healing and recovery are possible, actually achievable, and we are here to move forward together. Before I introduce our guest today, a couple of other housekeeping items. Today's interview is being live streamed. This interview, like all of the other interviews in the series, is being recorded for later viewing on my YouTube channel and on my website, www.ocdrecoveryturningpoints.com. Everyone who is on the live stream will be muted, and your videos can be on or off, up to you, except mine and our guest, of course. The chat room is open. I ask everyone to be respectful of others and maintain decorum. We've never had a problem with that. I don't expect we'll have it today. And we will have a Q&A at the end for anyone who would like to chime in. So let me jump to it. I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to grab your bio and read it. Stuart Ralph, MA, MSc, is a counselor and psychotherapist in Farnham, Surrey, England. Stuart is the creator and host of the podcast, The OCD Stories, which just aired its 534th episode and has over 8 million downloads. I, Shannon, was the featured guest for episode number 94 in 2017. Stuart is also trained in SPACE, Supportive Parenting for Anxious Childhood Emotions, which is a parent-based treatment program for children and adolescents with anxiety, OCD, and related problems. Stuart has a Master of Arts degree in Integrative Counseling and Psychotherapy from the University of Roehampton, and a postgraduate Master of Science degree in Mental Health Psychological Therapies from the University of London. I introduced to everybody the famous Stuart Ralph, an old friend we've met many years ago. And like I said in the introduction, Stuart, I was your 94th guest. And a lot of people who talk to me now, they say that's how they found out about me, on your program. And so I couldn't be more thankful to you. But I am really amazed, as you everything that you've done is really a reflection of how I recovered from OCD. You were very methodical in how you went about this. And I remember you way back when you started, and I was number 94, and we met many years ago. But you have gone on not only to make this just a huge smash in OCD recovery terms, the OCD stories, that is, you've had over 8 million views, which is just off the charts. But more than that, you went on and turned yourself into a therapist, which
Mhm.
is amazing. And so you give back in so many ways. And I've had other folks on here who I would say the same thing to. You suffered from OCD, you took care of yourself, and then, not only do you give back to the community through social media and your podcast, but you put all your money where your mouth is and became a therapist and are helping people every day find freedom, find their lives again. And you are one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. You're so gracious and so kind to everyone you meet. And, and I applaud your success. I applaud what you do. You're just a great, loving human being. And so thank you for all of that. Welcome to the program, Stuart.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate them. What amazing words, and they mean a lot. Thanks a lot.
Of course. All right. So let's jump into it.
Yep.
I have 20 or 21 questions for you. And again, I appreciate you being here. And right now, it's late for you in England. It's 9 or after 9 p.m. So you've been open about your personal struggle with OCD. Can
Yeah.
you take us back to when you first realized something wasn't right and what that period of your life felt like?
Yeah. My earliest memory was actually in the States. So we went to Disney. Is it Disney World in Florida or Disneyland?
World. Yeah,
World.
that's
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. The amount of times I've got that wrong when talking in American, someone shouted at me, correcting me. It's a Disney World. I was like 7, just turned 7. And obviously, America, for coming from the UK, especially back then, America was big, big place. Everything's bigger, cars are bigger. It's not like now where America's all over British TV. So it's familiar, right? Somewhat. But back then at 7, what was I? It was like 94. It was, yeah. So the first night we landed, my dad was ill. So maybe jet lag, plane food, whatever it was. But he was in the motel sleeping it off. And I just remember being in the diner with my mum and my brother and just getting this overwhelming sense of doom and dread, which now I would call anxiety. At the time, I didn't know what anxiety was. And it was like I was being bombarded by these images of this tarantula like crawling up my dad while he was asleep in the motel, and it was going to bite him and kill him. And it felt like a premonition at the time. Obviously, we know that's not the case, but and I had this feeling of I have to tell my mum, I have to tell her. And I didn't. For whatever reason, there was obviously a part of me that thought, surely not, or I was too scared or embarrassed. I don't know. I didn't say it. We obviously get back to the motel room and he's fine, obviously. And then on that same trip in the swimming pool, I would go in the water, and obviously Florida in like June is hot as hell, right? It's humid and I'm 7. I want to be in the swimming pool, and as soon as I'd hit the water, my brain would just bombard me with adrenaline of I'm about to be attacked by a shark. That was the intrusive image, and I would sprint out the other side of the pool. So each time I went to the pool, I would jump in and jump straight out. So I'd be in the pool for like 2 seconds at a time. And the time my brother, who was older than me, thought it was funny to like hold me in, and then I'm near enough having a panic attack because it feels near certain I'm going to die. Obviously, I wasn't going to. So those are my earliest memories. Aside from that, it was actually an amazing holiday or vacation. So that's where it started. And then throughout the years, it got more into like feeling like I was going between dimensions almost. Like if I would still be with my family, but I wouldn't be with them. Almost like not Inception, Interstellar, where it was weird. It's hard to explain, and I would have to do certain rituals, tap things 5 times, walk past things over and over again, especially old objects, antiques, stuff like that. Old paintings would really trigger me. Um, and if I didn't do something, someone would die in a, less fortunate country, etc. And then it morphed into like sexual orientation OCD in my teen years, and then relationship OCD and real event, and then that's what kind of led me to treatment eventually in my 20s. So yeah, I mean, at the time, I didn't have a clue what was going on because back then kids didn't know mental
Sure.
health. Now, obviously, I work with children, and the amount of 7-year-olds that can tell me what anxiety is and stuff like that, it's brilliant. Whereas, yeah, my
Oh,
generation
sure.
didn't have a clue.
Yeah, I mean, from when you first suffered that was generally in the time frame when I was, well, no, that was in the time frame when I was going through a very difficult period with OCD, not knowing what was wrong with me. And I was in my 30s, right? At that time, not to age
Mm.
myself, but I was in my 30s at that time. So, and when I was diagnosed, there was very little out there about what OCD was. You said you got diagnosed in your 20s. What were some of your more difficult moments and how did you get through those?
I would say I got through them badly. There's one moment that always sticks out in my head. I think I was like probably 9 or 10. And thresholds used to really trigger me. So like going across door thresholds. And I remember, I don't know where my brother was. He must have been in his bed. But my mum and dad were downstairs in the living room watching TV. And for whatever reason, I remember coming out of my bedroom. Again, I don't know why. It was at night. And I just remember being stuck and having to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I remember this going on for ages. And then eventually I just sort of broke down. And I remember thinking this can't be the normal human experience. I don't know if it was those words, because that's probably too articulate for my 9-year-old brain, but it was something along those lines. And I remember feeling like this feels like a superpower, but like a really bad one, not a good one. Because at the time it was like, Superman hid his identity. And in some way, I'm hiding all of this from my family. But the fear was if I told them, I would end up in a straitjacket, and then I would be taken away from my family, because that was my conception of mental health at the time, was
Mhm.
straitjackets and whatever else. So that's why I kept silent for so long. Another big one for me, I never got diagnosed with this because it lasted for about 3 years, and then I think it just morphed back into OCD, but BDD, a body dysmorphic disorder, when I was 13, 14, 15. And that's probably the main time I've been sort of suicidal, because I didn't really see a way out. OCD, there's always been a part for me which is like, part of me knows this is ridiculous. BDD was like, no, I believed what I was worrying about. Like I was bought hook, line, and sinker into it. And that made me really sort of feel depressed in a big, big way and hopeless. So, yeah, those are some of the
So
lowlights.
what prompted you to finally go be seen in your 20s? Mm.
Well, I went when I was like 17 to the National Health Service here in the UK, and it was even mental health was even less funded back then than it is now. And I went and I had a couple of assessments with a psychiatrist and psychologist, and they said, yeah, it could be OCD, but we don't think it's severe enough just yet. Yeah. So they were like, read these books on OCD. If that doesn't work, come back and we can give you some CBT. And I was 17. I had never done well academically. I didn't read books back then. So there's no way I was going to read self help books at 17. Now I love self help books, but back then it just wasn't going to happen. So I just continued struggling. At university, it actually got better for me for a few years, because I was just, I moved away from home. I was excited by everything. I was playing for my basketball team. And so I was just, I think, so busy that it was there, but it was very manageable at that point. And then when I got into work, it then started ramping up again. And then when I was 27, I was like, actually, I have to do something about this now, and went private and paid for it. Um, yeah.
And so what was the turning point that you I'm always interested in turning
Mhm.
points
Yeah, of
of
course.
people's recovery. Um, when you went and finally got diagnosed and everything, was there
Yeah.
like a specific point that you can remember that you were like, "Okay, I can, see where this is going. I see that maybe recovery is possible?"
Yeah, the thing that pushed me into finally say enough was it started to get to a really dark place again. Like it'd been ruining my life a lot, but it started to get to a point where I was feeling bleak and I guess depressed now in hindsight, but like really like and it was real event OCD at the time. So with real event, obviously it can make you feel like this horrible person. And that was something I felt like I couldn't live with, and I had to deal with it. So that's what pushed me into getting help. And in turning point, acceptance and commitment therapy was a really big thing for me when I learned about that.
Mhm.
This psychological flexibility, learning to see thoughts as thoughts, not getting attached so much to them or buying into them, was a real game changer for me. Obviously, ERP did wonders too, but yeah, ACT was. I had that before ERP, and that really, turned things around for me, I think.
Did you have any misconceptions about recovery when you were going through it that now have kinda changed over time?
Mm. Yeah, I no doubt did. I probably at the time thought that I can get rid of it completely. And now I say, not, anyone listening or listening in the future, it's still there for me sometimes, but I live life the way I want. I'm not beholden to OCD. I can do what I want when I want, within reason, obviously. Um, and when it comes up, I deal with it. I know I've got the skills, tools. I know what it is. I don't buy into it as much. So, but occasionally I still get anxious. I still feel guilty or get the thoughts, but that's okay. It's just my
That's
thing.
amazing, Stuart. I mean, what a very powerful answer, to that question. I tell people all the time, whether it's curable or chronic, we don't need to debate that. The truth is, if you know what to do when OCD taps you on the shoulder, you never have to fear the disorder again. Right? You don't
Yeah.
ever have to fear it, and you can live your life. How has living with OCD shaped the way that you deal with your clients or help your clients?
Yeah, I think it's massively shaped me as a therapist. I guess empathy, and that's not to say a therapist that hasn't experienced OCD is not going to have empathy. I don't know. I think when they're saying they're really stuck or they can't get out of a cycle, I can relate to it, on a deeper level. So maybe I have the same amount of empathy as another therapist, but I think I just get it. And I think there's a real drive for me, especially because I work with children, and young people that the reason I always tell people, like, I didn't go into working with children and young people because I just love children and young people. Don't get me wrong, I like working with them. But, some people become teachers because they just love kids. That wasn't the case for me. For me, I didn't like them any more or any less than adults. I just wanted to work with kids because if we can, you know, what was it like? Heal the kid, save the adult. That's my kind of view. If I can help the kid now, I'm saving them hopefully from decades of pain. That
Oh,
was my
sure.
logic. Yeah.
I think, and it makes perfect sense, particularly having suffered as a child in your way.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
if I would have known then,
Mm.
what I know now,
Yeah.
maybe I wouldn't have had to suffer as much going through. What inspired you to move from, let's say, OCD sufferer to therapist? Was it
I'd
that?
always that, yeah. And I'd always wanted to be a therapist from the age of about 15. I remember thinking I wanted to be a psychologist, which at the time to me meant therapist. It didn't mean psychologist, it just meant therapist. But I didn't get the grades because really struggled. I think partly because of, well, a large part because of OCD as well as other things. I struggled in school, did quite badly academically, didn't get the grades I needed to do my A levels in psychology. A levels are like 16 to 18 in the UK. So I guess the second part of your high school. And yeah, so I wanted to do psychology, sociology, and I just didn't get the grades. And the teacher was like, look, if you do this, she was being well meaning, but she said, you're going to struggle, which now I know is like, let me struggle because if I enjoy it, I would have worked hard and I'd never enjoyed school. So anyway, I went into marketing, and the reason I did that was because of consumer psychology. I was still involved in like the brain and thinking, but it was more like how can I get people to buy stuff more than helping them. And so then when I was about 28, yeah, it's 10 years ago, I started my journey actually into retraining. I was just like, I have to do this now or never. So it'd been on my mind throughout my 20s.
Dang.
Yeah, I'm glad I did it. And yeah, took a loan out to cover my degree and yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think that that's awesome, right? Just pursuing that dream, no matter when it occurs to you during
Yeah,
your lifespan, you say, no, this is what I would really like to do. And I think the older you get, the more courage it takes, the more risk you feel because you kind of have to put everything you're doing living kind of on hold because you got to pay for school and all of these other things.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, in what ways has your personal story influenced your therapeutic style?
I think I listen a lot. I know that sounds obvious, but I think definitely in sort of CBT therapy, sometimes it can be all like action, go, 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 let's do this, let's do that. And I try and bring in a bit more sort of humanistic therapy, which is much more client led, listen more. So I'm obviously doing the hierarchies and act and skills, but I also allow plenty of time to just listen. And I think as a young kid, that's really what I needed is just someone to give me time and listen. And typically, even now, it takes me a while to open up in my personal life unless someone sits with me and gives me that time. And then I will naturally open up and start talking a lot. But before that, I'll be very reserved and closed. And so I try and give that to my clients. That's probably one area. More personality. I like to be playful and have fun and be silly. And I think that helps working with kids. So I bring a lot of that in. And I would do it, even though I was working with adults, I would bring that in because OCD is so horrible that I think if you can bring humor in when appropriate, I think it's really useful.
And I'm going to come back to therapy in a little bit and talk a little bit about how you get people to do really difficult work, right? You and I both know that it does take recovery takes effort, and it is difficult, scary work, or at least it can be. Most usually is. But let's shift to the OCD stories. You're the podcast now, and I don't know if it's always been a podcast, but whatever podcast means, that's what it is now. But you've been doing this for a long time. So take us through that. What originally motivated you to start the OCD stories?
Yeah, well, actually, the OC Stories, originally it wasn't meant to be a podcast. It was, I was reading people's stories on the internet and I was really enjoying them and they were helping me in my own recovery. But I felt that they were just scattered all over the internet. Um, so I wanted to create a website that was like a one-stop shop, so to speak, where people could come and find tons of stories, and especially ones with elements of recovery focus in it. So after about 3 months, I then decided to start the podcast, and I continued the written stories for about 2 years, 3 years, and then I stopped because it was just taking up too much time, unfortunately, with editing them and all of that. It was actually I was in therapy, but I wasn't doing massively well at that point, and I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, feeling quite hopeless, like almost giving up. I wasn't giving up in terms of giving up. I was giving up in terms of this isn't going to get better, and my life's going to suck for for a long time. And I just remember thinking, right, well, if my life's going to suck, then I want to do something that helps other people's lives suck less. And that's probably because around that time I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. You know, when he talks about finding meaning in suffering and then it can kind of no longer be suffering. So I had that, I think, in the back of my mind. And then I thought, and then for about a couple of weeks, I was just thinking, well, what could it be? What could I do? And then that's when I came up with the OCD stories. So it really was, I guess, as you say, a turning point, sitting on the bed thinking,
Yeah.
because yeah, if it's going to suck, at least hopefully I can help someone.
Did you imagine, and I can't imagine that you did imagine this, but, you know, did you imagine that could you have imagined that it would grow as big as it is and as popular as it is? I mean, like I said before, it's the go-to for a lot of people around the world. It is the go-to, right? You go there and you're gonna find somebody's story that resonates. Could you imagine that it would get that big?
No, not at all. I'd like to say I did, but I didn't. My logic, I remember thinking it quite clearly because it was two motivations. One, I want to help people, and two, I want to interview. At the time, I wasn't doing story episodes. I was just interviewing experts because I wanted answers for my own life. And I thought if anyone else listens to this, then that's amazing. So it was really my curiosity that drove it, and that's what drives me to this day when I interview people. I'm curious. And yeah, I remember starting to see, like 20 listeners and I was impressed by that. Like that wasn't like, oh, just 20. I was like, that's amazing. Like 20 people were listening. And then I started seeing a few hundred. And then within 2, 3 months, I started to see like 1,000 people have listened to that episode and that was mad to me at that point. And then, yeah, then it just kept growing obviously, there's a lot more competition now in podcasts, which is a good thing because we need more voices. So it's not growing as quick as it once was, but that's okay. It still hopefully helps people. But yeah, no, I didn't expect it at all. So, and I don't really check my stats because I know that you can get in your head, you can get disheartened if it hasn't, if it's dipped or whatever. So now it's like I'm just doing it, and if hoping people are listening.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people really get charged by the competition aspect of it all, but not me. I mean, I had the attitude when I wrote my first book, if this helps one person, I'm good,
That's
right?
it.
And the same for what I'm doing with this series and everything else I do. If it resonates with somebody and they find hope and help in it, I'm good. I
Yeah.
mean, I have accomplished my mission. And you're right. If you start to like chase stats and do all that, it can be
Comes
a
a ego. Yeah.
yeah, it's more about ego and then you can be, as you said, disheartened because
Yeah.
it didn't get what you want. And so, and all of us, I think if you look at all of us collectively, all of us just want to help people. That's it. You really just want to help and do it. So, what themes or conversations have resonated most deeply with your listeners? do you think?
Mm.
Like, you could look at some and say, "This one," and maybe it's just by the number of people who've listened to it, I don't know how you would gauge that, but
Yeah.
are you able to gauge that?
Yeah, I can see the download numbers. I haven't checked them in a long time, but I know when I last time I did it, probably a few years ago, the most listened to episode at that point was Dr. Michael Greenberg, and that was Rumination is a Compulsion, I think it's titled. And I don't know whether that turned things, but at that point, obviously therapists were aware of rumination, but it wasn't really talked about. Like no one really and then about within a year after that, you were seeing rumination everywhere. Everyone was talking about rumination. And I'm not going to take credit for that because I think it's Michael talking about it more, got other therapists talking about it more, which then got people creating materials and reels and whatever else. And Michael's been a bit controversial in those early days, especially because, he came out guns blazing, which he owns. Because I think at that point, he'd had some backlash from the therapy community about some of his ideas, but equally that his passion, really inspired people. And I think that's why he got so many downloads. But he's a really innovative thinker. Dr. Stephen Phillipson usually does really well on the podcast. Again, both Michael and him, they're very like, these are my ideas. I believe them. They're very confident, and people are drawn to confident people. Yeah, your Hirschfields have always done well, John Hirschfield. Um, and then obviously all the story episodes. I've learned a lot from all the story episodes, but they usually do really well.
Yeah, it's that relatability. I mean, there's one of, getting knowledge and everything, but also the relatability piece, which is why I think sufferers turned therapists are always very effective because it's that relatability and that, that the person you're talking to has actually walked in your shoes in some way. What do you think makes the OCD stories stand out? And because you mentioned it yourself that there's a lot out there now. There's a lot in this space. There's a lot of competition, but the OCD story still stands out. What do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
Because I think one, I try and be. I don't. Well, I'm authentic in it. I'm not putting on an act. I remember someone I know, an advocate, when they met me in person, they said, you're exactly the same as you are on the podcast, except for your sense of humor is dirtier," which,
Oh,
I've got a rude sense of humor, which obviously I don't put out on the podcast because I don't want to offend anyone. But other than that, I think I'm very, very genuine. I am who I am. I don't have a telephone voice. My voice you hear on the podcast is how I talk with the people in my life. I'm not putting on an act. So I think I'm not saying anyone else is because I don't listen to too many, but I'm congruent, I think. And then also my curiosity, maybe that's what separates it. I've always been curious. I've always been open-minded. I got on, well, IBT, but it's now called ICBT. So I got Dr. Kieran O'Connor, who's passed now, sadly, but I got him on in 2016. And ICBT only started getting really popular like 3, 4 years ago. So, I was 5 years before that. And that's not me bragging, but it's just saying I was curious. I was open minded. I wasn't waiting on the evidence. I was, willing to cover things. I covered psychedelics early as well. And I covered it again recently. And that's not me pushing any of this. It's just wanting to put it out there and let people decide what's right for them.
mhm.
So I think my curiosity has always been a good asset for me, and as a therapist as well, because if I get a client I'm stuck with, that curiosity kicks in and I'll think of hopefully creative ways of trying to help. Doesn't always work, but it helps
Yeah.
most of the time.
Well, I mean, I was going to use a similar word to curious. I mean, because when I look at you and I say what makes him successful, what made the OCD story successful, and I think you are genuinely interested in
Mm,
what people have to say that you bring onto your program.
mm.
You can hear it in your voice, you can hear it in your questions. You're genuinely. I mean, you and I talked. This is going to age both of us, but it was 9 years ago.
Yeah, about that.
And I back then I said, "This man is genuinely interested in what I have to say," which makes
Mm,
the guest feel more comfortable, obviously. But I think that, and you're down to earth. You're like a regular guy,
mm,
um, talking to somebody. That's what makes it special. You're genuinely interested, as you say, curious, and you're a down to earth person, right? You make people feel comfortable. And so it's not a threatening space at all. Even if you're talking, I'm sure, even if you're talking about controversial subjects, you make it, at least somehow manageable for people to tune in. Kudos to you. It's like you're an amazing guy.
Thank
All right, let's go to back into some therapy stuff here, and your work with youth, families, and space. You work significantly with children and those under 25. What motivated you to concentrate with the younger generation, and why is intervention so important? You touched on this earlier,
you.
but I want you to elaborate a little bit
Yeah.
on it because for all the parents who are going to be watching this,
hmm
I want you to kind of talk to them about their kids and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. I believe in early intervention. I think if we catch it early, it's easier to treat, in my opinion. Like when I work with kids that are 9 and below, they've probably been my most successful clients. I can have the biggest impact with them. When you hit those teen years, they can get a bit more resistant, a bit more not interested. And that could just be I struggle to work with teens, maybe. That could just be down to my inadequacy. But I just find the brain is much more malleable pre 10. I worked with a mum recently who was feeling a bit guilty. She felt like, maybe she missed it and she should have done more when her kid was younger. And I was like, well, it's not that easy and it's not that simple. And we don't want to look back and berate ourselves because we did the best we could with the knowledge we had and the resources we had at the time. And some kids don't want to do therapy. As much as I say the 9-year-olds and 8-year-olds do really well in therapy, they've got to agree to come first of all. And I've worked with some families where the kids don't want to come. So it doesn't matter how malleable their brain is if they're not going to come to therapy. So yeah, I think parents can really beat themselves up unnecessarily. And then, yeah, I think in some level, it's that whole the archetype, Jungian archetype of the wounded healer, right? That most therapists, they're wounded healers. They're just trying to heal their own kind of inner stuff, and that's probably definitely true for me. I'm still maybe trying to heal aspects of myself. I think I've worked through a lot of it, but I imagine on some level it's still there. But that drives me. Going back to the podcast, that's why I am really curious because I'm trying to solve a problem to this day. I don't think we've figured OCD out. I think we've got really good therapies, but we haven't nailed it on the head, and that's what drives me. Is I'm trying to nail it on the head. Not saying I'm going to figure it out, but I'm trying to interview people that might. So yes, that's why I work with kids really. And as much as I didn't go into it because I love kids, working with kids, I've grown to really appreciate working with kids, and I couldn't imagine working with adults now. And just because kids, they're fun, they're honest. If they don't like something, they'll tell you most of the time. And I think as we get older, we realize that's maybe not polite and things like that. But I actually like it when they're just blunt with me. I find it funny. So yeah.
Does OCD present differently with kids than adults? And if so, or even whether it does or not, I mean, what tips do you give to parents to look out for, about, hey, if your child starts doing X, Y, or Z, you might want to think about getting some kind of a diagnosis for this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it definitely can differ. I don't know the science, so I can't remember. It's been a long time, but there are certain themes you'll get less of in kids, like taboo themes. But that being said, I've worked with a 7-year-old before that was having real graphic harm thoughts, but in my experience, it's less common, but it does happen. As always says, as you get older, that's probably down to I imagine like the prefrontal cortex is less developed in kids and it's not coming up with these graphic themes. It's often much more like something's wrong or something could be wrong or something bad's going to, it's much more vague in my experience. Um, at that young age, and then teens, so I see a lot of contamination or emotional contamination, and then starting to get some of the harm-based ones as well at that point. um but yeah, things to look out for, obviously repetitive behaviors. That's not necessarily a guarantee it's OCD. Like in autism, you have repetitive behaviors, can have them. So you're looking out for those compulsions, those repetitive behaviors. If you can ask the kid, why are they doing it? Is it a worry that's driving it? Is it taking up a lot of their time? Do they look really distant a lot of the time? If they're glazed over, they might be sort of ruminating and in their head. So that's, if I see my client glaze over and kind of zone out, I'll go, "Are you ruminating?" And 99% of the time they are. Um, and then that allow you to ask them, what's going on. I think kids are much better now at opening up to their parents and saying, a lot of the kids I work with, that they've said something to the parents and then the parents have brought them along. Which that's not going to be the case for every kid, but I think it's way more common. Yeah. But I think it's important for schools and people like that and teachers to also be aware, because there'll be stuff in school. When I was writing as a kid in elementary school, I was like with E's and K's, and if it didn't quite feel right, I would like color it in almost. So my whole text just looked chaotic and messy, but no one really flagged that. Um, I didn't expect them to. It was a long time ago, but it's looking out for things like that that I think could
Mhm.
be really helpful, and flagging that to the parents. Yeah.
Okay, well, tell us about the space, that program, and then kind of shift in also to how do you help parents support their child without unintentionally
Mm.
reinforcing OCD, accommodating, all of that.
Yeah.
But tell us about space.
Yeah. Yeah. So SPACE stands for Supportive Parenting for Anxious Childhood Emotions. I always joke whenever I say that, but it took me about 2 years to be able to say that without fumbling it. It's a bit of a mouthful. So the idea with SPACE is, well, it was developed by Ellie Leibovitz and associates or colleagues at Yale University in the States. Um, and I don't know whether they said this, but the way I kind of paraphrase it is that, like, CBT is good a lot of the time, but if your kid won't go to therapy, CBT is useless, because you can't do CBT if they're not in the room with you. So Space was developed as a way of helping parents of kids who couldn't or wouldn't attend therapy, to kind of empower the parents to make some kind of impact. So it's really two pillars. It's increasing support. So Space has this definition of kind of validating your kid, which might sound like, "I can see you're really struggling right now," or "I can see it's really hard for you when dot dot dot." And then it's give confidence. So, "And I know you can ride this out," or "I know you can resist this." It's that kind of statement. And then it's gradually reducing accommodations. So accommodations are the things it's basically the parent doing a compulsion on the kid's behalf. So it's anything parents do that play into the kids' OCD. It might be like buying them excessive amounts of soap so they can do their washing rituals. You might be hiding certain utensils because it triggers harm thoughts. You might not be allowed in certain rooms because it triggers the kids' OCD. And if you avoid that room, you're accommodating their OCD, and which kind of keeps the OCD cycle going. Now, parents do this instinctively because it's normal for parents to accommodate in life. I accommodate my kid, and it's a loving thing, and that's why parents accommodate their OCD, kids' OCD. But the downside is, in OCD, it's paradoxical. It just makes it worse. So I kind of de-shame it for the parents and saying, like, "You're doing this because you love them. And any other time in the kid's life, this is a good thing you're doing. But because of OCD, actually, it's just counterproductive. And so we need to reduce. And actually, the loving thing to do is reduce the accommodations." So Space does it in a very structured, gradual way. It's not like harsh. It's very systematic. You communicate to the kid, "This is what we're doing this week." It's all on the parents doing the work. And it's not going to heal someone's OCD, but I've seen it get down kids' symptoms by I imagine up to like 50%, which you
Well,
think is up to 50% in terms of they're still maybe really suffering, but like they've made a huge impact in the kids' OCD. And other times that I've seen it not work too. So it's really like, there are reasons why it didn't work actually. Sometimes my fault, sometimes I don't say the parents' fault, but it's hard to pull back an accommodation when your kid suddenly, begs, pleads for you to do the accommodation because you're triggering their OCD by not accommodating them. It's really hard for parents to ride that out. So that's the work of me to do better in supporting the parents there. But yeah, it's a useful therapy, and I either do it in a purist sense, and you can do it where the kid is in therapy and also the parents are doing space. So I'll do it that way sometimes too. And sometimes I won't do space in a structured sense, but I'll take the principles and use it when I'm working with parents. But yeah, it's a good therapy.
So what do you tell them anything in particular when when they feel helpless? Watching their child struggle like that, I mean, is
Yeah.
it the comment that you made that, well, looking at it from this angle, saying if you accommodate their OCD, it's not helpful, so it's actually loving. But what do you tell them? I mean, how do you keep their spirits up when they're going through
Yeah.
this?
So you've got to get the psychoeducation right. I guess it's the same in working with someone directly with OCD. If they don't buy into the rationale behind ERP, they're not going to do it. And it's just the same. It's getting them to really understand the role accommodations play in keeping OCD going. And so I might revisit that. Then it's just support of like, we just have to ride this out. The first 3 days of this reduction might be really hard, but there's a good chance by day 4, the kids started to be okay with it. What I've seen a lot is the kids hate it, but then by about week 4, week 5, the parents will report to me that the kids come to them and go, so what's it going to be this week? The kid's now interested in asking what the
Right.
parents are going to reduce. When week 1, 2, and 3 was like, not very nice. The kid starts to see, I think, that it's helping them, and then they get on board. They don't need to be on board, but it helps. And another one is it's important the parents work together as a team. And this, even if they're separated and divorced, if it's possible to work as a team, if they're in speaking terms, or sometimes married couples don't agree on, you know, how to hold firm and all of that, and one maybe gives in easier than the other. So it's working with parents to be a team, because otherwise the kid's going to divide them just to get their needs met, because obviously the kid doesn't want to be overwhelmed. And kids do that naturally, right? My daughter would do that. She'll not so much anymore, but she used to do it a lot. Play me and my wife off of each other to get her needs met. Um, it's just what kids do, whether they're anxious or not. And yeah, so it's a good therapy. I like it.
All right. So going back to the person who has OCD and is suffering, for somebody who's currently in the depths, and I call it the hell pit. That was the way I thought of OCD. I was in a hell pit. That's just
Mm.
the way I thought of it. But for someone currently in the depths of OCD, struggling, and they're trying and trying, but they don't see anything, and they start to get this sense that recovery is impossible for them. What message would you want them to hear?
I think one of my early, not my early slogans, but something I used to say a lot in the podcast is that just recovery is possible. I think it can, especially if you've been trying for a while, it can be very disheartening. But my thing is, there's people will say, "Oh, I've tried everything," and I never buy that. You have not tried everything. There's a million therapies, even ones that haven't been evidence based for OCD. If you've tried everything, still try the other therapies. Because there's tons of different. There's psychedelics now. Like, I'm not pushing psychedelics, but it's just to say that's going to be an option in the future. There's different. There's tons of variations of medication that you can do, and combinations of those medications. And there's, sometimes you need to bring in more scaffolding. It's more than once a week therapy. It might be fortnightly. It might be an IOP. It might be support groups, peer support, in your case. All of this it's finding the combination of things that can help support you. It can also be forgetting OCD. Sometimes what gets in people's way of recovery is like family stuff. We don't talk about that a lot, but family dynamics can be really problematic sometimes. And, there can be other issues, or trauma could be getting in the way. And if that's not dealt with, so it's really infinite, the things that can be getting in the way. But as long as you stay curious and open and keep asking questions, you'll eventually find the right combination of things, I think.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to give it time. It's a journey.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen overnight, right? But and if recovery is your objective, you just keep finding a way to do it,
Mm.
right? And I tell people, some people ask me, how can you say it that confidently?
Mm.
I call it an irrefutable truth, Stuart. If you consistently do the things that make this disorder weaker, it will get weaker.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
will. So
Yeah.
you have to learn what to do, how to do it, and stay with it, even maybe because of intense anxiety and fear, right? We
Mm.
don't want to live like that forever.
Yeah.
And then
One other thing to just jump in, sorry,
go ahead.
Shannon, is even maybe forgetting recovery for a second and, thinking from an ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy lens, it's instead of how can I recover, it's how can I live life? Like forgetting OCD for a second. How can I get out of the house? How can I apply for a job I want? How can I train in the area I want to train? How can I see my friends more? And trying to do those things more, that will help you towards recovery, but you're not chasing recovery. And that's what
It's
I
a
do with a
great
lot of my clients before we even do some of the normal sort of exposure stuff. If they're not messaging their friends because they've been avoiding their phone, that's one of the first things we do is trying to build connection. Or like if they like film, right, we need to get you to the cinema, like just starting to get them living their life. Um, I've found to be quite fruitful.
I think that's, brilliant. It really is brilliant. Alright, one final question for you because I
Yeah.
wanna be mindful of your time. Let's just talk practical. What practical tips would you offer to new therapists? Therapists who are now stepping into this space,
Yeah.
and you've stepped into this space as a therapist, and there will be therapists who watch these,
Hmm.
the slew of videos. I call this my dream team of OCD
Hmm.
recovery icons, right? And you're on that list with all of
Thank you.
these
Yeah,
people.
you've got a really good list of guests. I saw it.
Yeah, yeah. I feel very honored that all of you, and I consider everybody on this list a friend. So I feel very blessed to be able
Mm.
to say that, but
Yeah.
truly honored that you all have said, yeah, I'll be happy to talk with you for an hour.
Mm.
No more for the year. No, I'm kidding,
Yeah.
but you're done. No more talking to Shannon. What practical tips would you offer to new therapists who want to effectively support people with OCD, especially younger clients?
Yeah. Yeah, well, younger clients, something I've been writing about and talking about a bit more is part of my therapy. Part of my training was in play therapy. So, when I work with especially under 10s, under 11s, I'm doing ERP, I'm doing ACT, absolutely, but I'm bringing in play at the same time because, again, the kids frontal lobe, all of that is not fully developed yet. It keeps developing until we're like 25, 26. So I think sometimes if we just sit them down and have conversations with them, we're missing something. So for me, I might bring in the sand tray or just get them to play. And while they're playing, we'll then do a hierarchy or we'll find creative ways of doing exposures and gamifying it and just making it fun. I found that quite helpful. So that's something I'm pushing out there a bit at the minute. You don't have to drop evidence-based therapies just because you're bringing in play. You can do both. And then just generally for therapists, I think they're probably going to be training in ERP, which is wonderful. But I would say practice and learn ACT as well, and not just ACT, because there's variations of ACT. I like the sort of Dr. Russ Harris's version of ACT because he has a lot of skills like dropping anchor, dipping in and out of the stream, which is great for dealing with rumination, urge surfing, which helps you surf the urge of doing a compulsion, which is great for then using an ERP. And so all of those sort of tools I've found really useful.
All right. I know it's very late where you live, so I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us. Just you've had such an unbelievably significant positive impact on this community, people all around the world who suffer, people who are loved ones with those who suffer, people who treat them. You're like a rock star in this space. And so keep doing what you're doing. I'm really proud of you. I've known you for quite a while, and I just love watching people give back and be successful in everything they do. So bless you, my brother. Thank you for everything. And like I said, just keep going. Are you going to go to the IOCDF conference?
I want to, I can't, unfortunately. It kind of clashes with something like a
Uh,
family event. I'm hoping to go to New York though next year.
okay.
Um,
Yeah. If you do, I'll see you there. So
yeah.
thank you much, Stuart. Really appreciate your time. And
Well, just to say
congratulations
so,
on
yeah, just say something to you, Shannon. Obviously, like, you've been doing this longer than I have, in the advocacy space. And obviously, there's a reason why all those great names are doing this with you because they value you and I value you and the work and you do and the commitment you've put in over the years. So it's inspiring to see people stick it out this long.
Well, thank you. It's a passion. I could do it forever. Blessings to you and your family. Keep doing what you do,
Likewise.
and I'll send you all this whenever I get it done. Okay.
Brilliant. Yeah, perfect. Appreciate
All
you,
right.
Shannon.
Thanks,
Thanks for the
Stuart. All right. See you. All
opportunity.
right. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.